Today's meeting of the Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board is called to order on August 9th, 2022. Welcome, everyone. Agenda for today's meeting is on the wall at the entrance of chambers. Please remember to turn off your cell phones. To ensure a complete record of the board's action, we ask that each individual wishing to speak clearly state your name and spell your last name for the clerk. I will ask the board members present to introduce themselves and identify the fields they each represent. We'll start with you.
Kevin Schnott, representing the nonprofit industry.
Pete Scalia, representing the homeless population.
Gabriela Camacho, representing the affordable housing builder.
Lindsay Dacus Harrison, real estate.
And I am your board chair, Camille Hepting, and I represent employers in Clearwater. Item 2.1, our first order of business, is to approve the minutes of the board's July 12th, 2022 meeting. May I have a motion to approve item 2.1?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 3, citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to items not on today's agenda? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we'll move on to the next item. Item 4.1, presentation by Linda Fisher, Fort Pinellas, regarding transportation as it relates to affordable housing. I would like to thank Mr. Chennault for helping to arrange for Ms. Fisher to join us today. And Ms. Fisher, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here. Transportation and housing pose some of the biggest challenges our communities face. Hearing from an expert as to how these two things relate and intersect will be very helpful for the board. So for the benefit of our board members, I will read your bio real quick. Linda Fisher is a principal planner with Fort Pinellas, focusing on land use planning, GIS analysis, and local government technical assistance. She co-authored the county-wide plan for Pinellas County, which coordinates future land use planning for all 25 local governments in the county, and has assisted many local governments with comprehensive plan updates, mapping, and other planning projects. Ms. Fisher is a certified planner with a master's in urban and regional planning from Florida State University and a bachelor's in psychology and sociology from Readiness College in Pennsylvania. She has nearly 24 years of public sector experience, planning experience with Fort Pinellas and the Pinellas Planning Council. Welcome, Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. It's great to be here. So I'm going to talk to you about a countywide effort to plan for affordable housing and how that fits into our other planning efforts.
Excuse me, Pat, can we get the PowerPoint on this one? I don't think the board can see it. If not,
Yeah,
there it
perfect.
is. Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and how planning for affordable housing fits into our countywide planning for transportation and jobs. Before I start, I wanted to say that while I'm here to talk about longer-term planning, for anyone who is having a housing emergency today, there are resources that the county has that may help. Online, you can go to rent.pinellas.gov and click Help with Housing. You can call 211, or you can text your zip code to 898-211. Okay. So I always like to start by talking a little bit about my agency, Fort Pinellas, because not everyone is familiar with what we do. We're not technically part of Pinellas County government. We're an independent agency with our own board, which is made up of elected officials representing all 25 local governments in the county. And that includes Councilmember David Albritton, who represents Clearwater. We wear a few different hats. We're the Planning Council for Pinellas County, coordinating land use for all the different communities. We're also the Metropolitan Planning Organization, so we coordinate transportation planning countywide. And we've also partnered with Pinellas County government on a countywide affordable housing effort. We have what we're calling a housing compact. You may be familiar with it, but I'll talk more about it in this presentation. I know that I don't need to tell anyone in this room about the importance of affordable housing, but it's helpful to try to quantify the problem. As of the last month, the median sales price for a single-family house in Pinellas County was $445,000. I found an example on Zillow of what that gets you in the current market. This one is an older 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, ranch house in average condition in St. Petersburg for nearly $500,000. The estimate is that it would cost $2,500 a month in mortgage payments That's an ideal case in terms of financing, and that doesn't include property taxes or homeowners insurance. Townhomes and condominiums are a little less expensive at about $300,000 median sales price, but the cost of all types of homes has, of course, been rising. It's been about 24% over the last year, and that's on top of other year-over-year increases. Now, we know the market is changing rapidly, so these median prices have probably already come down a little bit, but because of the increase in interest rates, that monthly payment is probably the same, if not more. Rents are also very expensive. Median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Clearwater is about $1,500 a month currently, and that's actually pretty good for Pinellas County. That's only a 10% increase from this month last year. But again, that's on top of year-over-year very steep increases. By way of comparison, on your screen is a list of essential types of workers and what would be considered an affordable monthly housing cost based on the benchmark that housing should cost no more than 30% of your gross income. And you can see that almost nobody in these professions that we all depend on could comfortably afford rent or mortgage costs in Pinellas County. This is a problem everywhere, and it's bigger than just providing a small number of traditional affordable housing units each year. So when we use the term affordable housing, we're really talking about a broader concept of housing affordability. We need to make housing more affordable in general. We all know there's no silver bullet for this. There aren't any easy or quick solutions, but there are long-term planning strategies that communities can consider to create more units and more diverse types of units for people of all income levels. But whether you can live comfortably is about more than just the cost of housing. Wherever you live, you've still got to get to work, to school, to the grocery store, the doctor's appointments. And unfortunately, the most affordable housing tends to be the farthest away from those things. After housing, transportation is typically the second largest expense that a household faces. That includes the cost of car payments, insurance, repairs, and of course, gas prices. The latest estimate we could find is actually from 5 years ago, but it shows that the average household in Pinellas County spends 24% of its income on transportation. Now, the benchmark for affordable transportation is that it should cost no more than 15% of your gross income. So our average household was already cost burdened well before the current economic crisis. Our best current estimate is that at least 1 out of every 3 households in Pinellas County is cost burdened with housing, transportation, or both. But in Pinellas, there aren't really any good alternatives for transportation. Without good transit, it's difficult to get from home to anywhere without a car. Transportation and where we live both play an important part in what jobs are available to us. As you would expect, research shows that workers who have reliable transportation have an easier time getting and keeping jobs. Employers also have a preference for hiring workers who live closer to their jobs, particularly for lower income workers. And that makes sense. If your car breaks down and you need to find another way to get to work, that's a lot easier to do if you work 5 miles away and not 25. But when a community has a high-quality transit system, that helps close that distance gap. It has the same effect of bringing workers physically closer to where they work. So what that means is we can't plan for housing in a vacuum. If we want to truly create economic opportunity for our residents, we need to plan for a network of housing and jobs that are connected by transit. So how do we do that in Pinellas County, where nearly 100% of our land is already developed? Well, we've got a plan. Advantage Pinellas is the name of our long-range countywide transportation plan. It was developed with input from all 25 local governments. It calls for concentrating redevelopment on our major corridors with density and design that supports transit. Those corridors have a lot of vacant and underutilized commercial property. So why not use that land to create higher density mixed-use hubs with housing and jobs, and then use them as a framework for building a high-quality transit system. Now, your city has already taken major steps toward that goal with your US 19 redevelopment plan. So what we want to do is take good local plans like that one and scale them up on a countywide basis. And we've got a number of tools that we can use to help make that happen. We have a countywide plan that coordinates land use. We have a 5-year transportation work program that directs state and federal transportation funding. And we offer technical planning assistance to local governments that don't have resources of their own. So we can use these things to build a countywide coalition to tackle these issues together as one county instead of as 25 separate governments. The first part of that effort is the Advantage Pinellas Housing Compact, which we are asking each community to sign on to. It sets general goals and identifies resources that we at the countywide level can bring to the table to help communities navigate these issues. We started last year by asking the 5 local governments that receive state and federal affordable housing dollars to sign on. Of course, Clearwater is one of those communities, and you were actually the first city to sign on, so we thank you for that.
Gotta get you an updated logo. You're gonna get me in trouble.
Oh, okay. This year, we are broadening the scope and inviting the other 20 local governments to join the compact. These are mostly smaller communities without a lot of experience with affordable housing. So before we approach everyone else, we're working on an outline of an action plan so that those communities will be able to see in more detail exactly what we're asking them to sign on to and what we can offer them in return. Another major part of this effort is what we're calling the investment corridor strategy. To identify the corridors that would be most appropriate to build a connected network of homes, jobs, and transit, and to begin to plan for them and direct funding to them. We conducted a countywide analysis that looked at factors like percentage of zero-car households, population density, job density, cost of housing, redevelopment potential, and equity in how we've made public investments in the past. We identified 3 corridors that scored most highly, and they include a portion of US 19, Roosevelt Boulevard into East Bay Drive, and the south half of alternate 19. We ranked them, and alternate US 19 came up as the top corridor. So we have just kicked off what we're calling the alternate US 19 investment corridor transition plan. It started in June, and we anticipate working on it through September of next year. The corridor stretches from Central Avenue in the south to Gulf to Bay Boulevard in the north. It passes through St. Petersburg, Seminole, Largo, Clearwater, and the unincorporated county. And we will be working with each community to help develop a transformative redevelopment plan for each part of the corridor. We've assembled a project management team that includes local planning staff, including from your city. Lauren Matsky is our main point person for that. We're also assembling a project advisory group of public and private stakeholders, private sector stakeholders, and this board has been identified as one of those stakeholders. So you will be definitely hearing from us in the coming months. Some of the goals of the study are to identify the barriers to redevelopment and revitalization, particularly for affordable housing and jobs. Identify incentives that are needed to make that revitalization happen, and that could be either financial or regulatory or more likely a combination of both. Make targeted investments in transit, bicycle, and pedestrian improvements with the long-term goal of creating premium transit service along the corridor, which would ultimately connect with the Sunrunner BRT down in St. Pete. And finally, to develop short, mid, and long-term implementation strategies that lay out a roadmap for how to accomplish all these goals. Again, we're just at the beginning of the process, but you'll be hearing a lot more about it, and you'll be asked to provide input and participation over the next year. Okay, so that's just an overview of what we're doing. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any comments or questions from the board? Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Thank you very much.
All right, item 4.2 is recommend city council approval of a CDBG CV subrecipient agreement between the city of Clearwater and the Pinellas County Early Learning Coalition. Mr. Lane?
Thank you. Chuck Lane, Economic Development and Housing Department. Thank you for being here today. Thanks again for your service to this board. This is an interesting agreement. We've been communicating with this group for a little bit, trying to figure out how we could go about helping the child care industry. We started with our club. We had some difficulties with that on how we could structure something that was equitable. So we came across the Pinellas County Early Learning Coalition, and we worked into this, and it seems to be something that can be very functional. So the Early Learning Coalition of Pinellas County partners with more than 500 preschools, family child care homes, and school-aged care providers to deliver education and enrichment programs that set a lifelong trajectory. Lack of access to affordable child care is a common issue, preventing families from returning to the workforce, particularly during the pandemic. As you all know, child care industry was really decimated. Lack of access to affordable, as the cost of child care rises, families are forced to make tough decisions that impact their children's self-sufficiency and academic success. Access to affordable child care helps to stabilize families and rebuild our economy. The Early Learning Coalition School Readiness Program provides tuition assistance to working families. School readiness funds pay for a portion of child care costs based on the family's household size, annual gross income. It's basically a sliding scale. While this program serves an average of 6,000 children countywide, the restrictive eligibility criteria excludes a lot of families. It leaves a lot of low-income families that aren't getting that help. So this agreement between us and the ELC will provide tuition assistance to low to moderate income families who don't qualify under those programs. Now, those other programs are funded by the Department of Education. Those are federal funds, of course, and JWB, local funds, obviously local tax dollars. So there is a gap among local families, low-income families, that don't qualify for either of those funds, and that's what our funding is intended to do. So our funding, what we're planning to do is use the same criteria, the same math, to determine what the benefit is to the family as those other two funding sources. So we're not creating something different, and again, we'll serve that gap, that eligibility gap. So under the agreement, ELC estimates to provide tuition assistance to 42 Clearwater households. Now, that's very difficult to predict that. At an average subsidy of $145 per week, all right? And that's over 12 months. Additional benefits to this partnership include a structured learning environment for children, parents returning to the workforce, and increased enrollment for local child care industry. At $145 per month, it adds up. It's about $7,500 a year. So, the way they get that is they average out, and it's, what we pay on average could be very different than that, because infants are basically, they're over $10,000 per on the subsidy that's provided under those two other programs. And then you get to 5-year-old pre-K children, and that's less than $4,000 a year. So depending on, what students, we're helping is really going to move that average. So it's hard to say exactly how much money. It seems like a heavy subsidy, but it's exactly what is being funded from those other two programs. So we're not recreating the wheel on it. We're just adding to the eligibility gap. So, and it's CDBG CV funds, which of course is federal money to address issues raising from the pandemic, and the child care industry is certainly that. So I mentioned our club earlier. One of the things we did, we tried to do this kind of thing with our club, and we tried to, what our club is experiencing is, and our club will benefit from this, but they're experiencing having difficulty getting people to come to work, right? So we talked about, well, what if we had a subsidy and raised, you were able to raise your wages through that. Through a countywide program, it would create some inequities in other communities where they're not paying that amount and they're paying more in Clearwater, so they weren't comfortable going that route. So we ended up going this route to help the child care industry. I think it'll make a big difference with these families, so I think it's a good contract. So I'll take questions, please.
Chuck, can you just clarify the average subsidy, $145 a month or per week?
Oh, I'm sorry, per week.
Okay.
Per week.
Yeah.
I misstated that. So it's about the average, we're looking at $75.49 per week for the subsidy, and there's an additional salary support component on top of that, 9% of that, which is an additional $679. So the total contract for the 12 months is $345,593.
And you said that would average 40-something families that we would be able to?
42
Okay.
is what they predict.
Again, with the caveat that we don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult to anticipate that.
So Chuck, the 42 families is just based on the amount of money that you guys have available for that program, right? It's not because we only have 42 families that we can help, right? Is that the case?
We look to them to let us know, who they could help, how many people they could help. We didn't ask them to restrict the funding.
Okay.
Let us know what it's going to take for you to provide as much help as you can. So that's what they predicted. I think they predicted that that's the amount of folks that in Clearwater that are low income, below 80% AMI, that don't qualify for the other two programs.
Seems like a small number of
Yeah.
families, but, so I wonder, but I'm glad that so the money is not restricting the amount of people that can be helped, right?
Right.
Once it's approved, if there's more families applying for this program, the amount of money can be increased, correct?
If the funding's available, we can, yeah. I'll be coming to the board within the next month, maybe 6 weeks, with an amendment to our CDBG CV plan. Okay, so you'll see how all that's laid out. This will be within that budget, so you'll get a better kind of holistic view of how we're budgeting those funds and plan to spend them. So, but yeah, if they exceed their funding and there's funding available, or other groups aren't spending the funding they predicted to spend, we can kind of play a little bit of a shell game and move money around if we have to.
Thank you.
Chuck, just one other quick question here. We're targeting city residents for this, correct? So would it matter where the child care would be? Would that have to be in the city, or could that be outside also?
We could fund someone, a resident of Clearwater, that is attending a child care outside of
Okay.
Clearwater. We actually one year funded an art club facility improvement on Whitney Road, because they served a lot of Clearwater residents. Good question.
Can you serve non-Clearwater residents, but if the child is attending a childcare here in the city of Clearwater?
That's a really good question. We can, but I'll have to talk with the Early Learning Coalition, because that's not really the intent. It would be eligible under the source, but I think that's a great point. I think I need to have that conversation with them, because we'd rather these funds go towards the Clearwater residents.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I just wonder if the mom and dad are working in the city of Clearwater, so maybe that's why they choose to bring the child for a daycare in the city of Clearwater, so.
Right, you're right. They, in talking through this with them, parents either, put their kids in childcare close to their home or close to their work.
Yeah.
So one or the other, yeah. So that's a really good point too. Folks working in Clearwater, that would be a reasonable expense, certainly.
Thank you.
This is a subsidy for people who are currently working, but they have a low-income job, correct?
Yeah, some of the folks aren't working because they can't put their kids in childcare.
Yep.
So that this will hopefully put a lot of people back to work. But it's certainly for folks, households with incomes, total household income below 80% of area median income.
All right. And then what was the income cap previous, or why were this population being missed by the previous program that they had? Was it
I
income?
think I'll have to talk with Lindsay. There's a little bit of a catch-22 with it. One of the programs, the folks aren't eligible if they're not working. Those are folks that would, that we could catch. And I think the other funding source, they go by the poverty level, so they have a different, it's a different cap.
Number, yeah.
It's very different than the AMI, levels. So I think those are the two challenges. But, yeah, good question. But yeah, that is a catch-22. I can't work because I can't get childcare.
Yeah.
I can't get childcare because I'm not working. It's a difficult place to be.
And that's the point I'm going to come back to. So you don't have a job, but if you get this program, you can get a job. That's $7,500 a year you're going to get for this to help you get a job. If after 90 days or 120 days or 180 days you don't have a job, are you still continuing to get this money?
Well, it's a 12-month program.
So the answer is yes, you don't really have to get a job.
Yeah, Yep,
right?
yeah.
I mean, the thing is that the child will still benefit from attending
I understand that.
early, I understand your point, because it could be
Because
like,
what I
well,
just got was free childcare too, right?
yeah, but, I guess if you think about the child itself, they're benefiting from that program either way.
I'm
right?
thinking that if a parent is home with the child should be able to get care from the parent.
Care, but not necessarily education,
They're going to a public school, yes?
Well, but they're
No,
five.
this is
These are under
before
6.
kindergarten, right? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So this only affects people going to kindergarten or
Yeah, this
younger?
is
yeah,
Zero to
young.
full-day
five.
childcare.
Okay.
Infant
Yeah.
to probably 4
5.
and a half, yeah. Before VPK, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Because VPK is free.
Yeah, the
How
highest age
How
group.
much education are infants getting?
Well,
Well, I mean-
nurture things, there's more to it than.
I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit of a devil's advocate
No,
here.
no, it's-
It's because what I see is, we have, I think, certainly we want to take care of everyone. We always want to do that. But we have a program that if I am only making X dollars an hour, using your scenario, mom and dad are both working, and they still can't afford childcare, giving them the subsidy, to me, makes absolutely 100%
Yeah.
sense. If I have a person who's getting the subsidy and doesn't have a job, and hasn't found a job in a year, what do we accomplish? Because that child had that parent with them for a year, yes?
But the money doesn't go to the family. The money goes to the
I
child
understand
care.
that, and I'm trying to say
center.
that if you've got a 3 or a 4 or a 5-year-old child and you're a parent, aren't you responsible for that child?
Yeah,
And so we're gonna give you $7,500 a year to do what?
well,
I'm just saying, what are we giving that, what are you getting for $7,500 a year?
well, the parents are getting nothing.
Yep.
I mean, the child.
You're getting a benefit.
Yes,
What is the benefit?
you're getting the benefit of not having to care for your child, but my point is like.
You're getting the benefit for not having to care for your child, even though you're not working.
Yeah.
I don't think
but
that's
when
the
you-
benefit. The benefit is that the child is receiving care and education regardless of what the parent can or can't afford. I think we're thinking past whether the parent wants to work or can work or is
But,
available to work.
But if you're a 3-year-old child and your mother is home because she doesn't have a job,
Uh-huh.
can't the mother teach that child at home, or does that child have to go to a daycare?
But we don't even know that the home is safe for the child at this point. We don't even know that this is a safe environment, that it's an environment that fosters growth, that fosters, education
Education,
and all
yeah.
these things. It's not about the parents, it's about the child at this point.
But
We're
so-
giving the
so
opportunity
the
for the
mother's
child.
home, or in your
I'm sorry,
scenario- No, I get what you're saying, but if
I'm
the
sorry.
mother's home in that scenario, nobody's forcing her to put her child in care. So if she's making the step to put her child, or he's making the step to put the child in care, there's a reason. And hopefully, the goal of the program is so that they can obtain employment. And they have a year to do so. So it's not going to be a continual program if not. But nobody's saying you can't stay home with your child.
Well, and it may be something that we don't know that the Pinellas County Early Learning Coalition is already working on, where they have an application system that includes some of this conversation of, are you looking for a job? Are you actively looking for a job? So we don't have that information. It's probably information that we could get from them
Yeah,
if
I'll
we were
communicate.
interested in.
And I will communicate with
In
them
seeing
on
that,
on
okay.
concern.
Yeah, maybe there can be a system that, our 1 month or 3 month or 6 month is checking, did you obtain employment?
Yeah.
But to your point, Pete, you would assume that every parent is responsible for their child and every parent has the best interest of that child to be educated and all of that. But we know that the reality is not like that. And when you get to that point, the child may not be receiving anything but just basic, needs, so.
No, I'm coming at it from this perspective. I see program after program after program that money gets pumped into, and I don't necessarily see the benefits on the back end of the program. I'm saying that if you have a program like this, what I would like to see is a series of maybe every 90 days we come and we find, did you get a job? Almost like unemployment. Did you get a job? Have you looked for a job? Have you gotten? Well, I went out on these interviews, I still haven't gotten a job. Okay, you're attempting at least. But to just from the way I hear it, once you're on this program, you don't really even have to look for a job. And so you're pumping this money in, and it's not getting anybody a job or getting somebody off of being unemployment.
Well,
I don't see that connection
We just don't
happening.
know that. We don't have that
And that's why I say
information.
there should
Yeah.
be a series of checks and balances in there
Yeah.
to verify that. I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
No, I agree with you. That's not an unreasonable request, and that's something that it can be probably added to the program, right? But I think, to Camille's point, I think the benefit of having a kid in this sort of childcare early, it's for the
I
child
don't have a
to
problem
be
with that. I
educated.
think that's, I'm not in disagreement with that. I'm just simply saying, can we have one less program that is just blindly funded with, okay, you're in the program, so here's the money, and there's no series of checks or balances afterward. That's all I'm saying.
And I will say that my argument is complete opposite of that, is to say these funds came for recovery after the pandemic, for COVID. Let's remember that we're in Florida and that most companies ask employees to go back to work in June of 2020, not in June of 2021, not this year. These people that have not had childcare because they were literally not able to leave a child at home to go back to a job that was asking them to go back, that may be why they don't have a job. We can't just look at it and say this is going to be a program that a lot of people that don't want to work are going to benefit from. I mean, we can, but I don't think that that's.
I didn't say that,
a
Camille. What I
positive
said
outlook.
was, if it's a program that's going to give money based on that we're trying to help people and subsidize people, I think there should be some series of check in there or balance that says, wait a second, are you even trying? Are you even trying?
Sounds like
It doesn't seem to me to be unreasonable.
But then
It's
you're
not unreasonable.
creating a position, so the
Correct.
Pinellas County Early Learning Coalition, their job is childcare, things like that, that's what they're focused on. So now, you're creating another checks and balances program, which is another person you have to pay, so out of the $334,000, with the goal of trying to get people back to work, you're gonna have to create a position and create some way that somebody's monitoring that.
And
So
again, we don't know that
all
they don't already have that.
Yeah.
We don't know that they don't already have that. And if you think about it, if this subsidy helps keep the childcare workers at work because we're able to get more kids inside of those buildings that are already there anyways, then that's also a positive. We're not just talking about the kids that are able to get care, we're also talking about those childcare employees that are able to have a job when they come to work, because there's kids that are actually able to come into those facilities.
And I think every program, you're gonna have the positive and what the goal and the intention of the program is, and then of course, you're always gonna have somebody that is using a program for a different reason.
Right.
And I think you take the good outcomes, and the outcomes we'll probably hear about of the 42 residents that hopefully will be able to take advantage of it. And, the good has to outweigh the,
We say that in almost every program, don't we?
and a lot of the programs
And there's a
do do
tremendous
that.
amount of waste and abuse out there.
There is.
And money that could be used to really go to solve problems doesn't get spent correctly.
I think I look at it with this, you have a year, then if there is, it's not you're in this program and you're in it for life, you have a year, and the child might, if it's a bad, people abusing the program, the child's not abusing the program, the child's in the
benefiting,
program, getting that development, and stimulation, and things that the programs are gonna do for early learning, that they might not be getting from home.
And this is something that I'm sure we can also request from the Pinellas County Early Learning Coalition, that at the end of the 12 months, they come and give us a report on exactly who these funds went to, and whether it was 42 families where half of the parents, and they may be single parent or two-parent family, half of them maybe didn't have jobs at the beginning, but by the end of the 12 months, they did, and now they're able to, if the kid can stay in daycare, then they'll be able to continue going to work.
I can definitely have the conversation. They're obviously gonna have to report monthly on their accomplishments. But Pete, to your concern, I can certainly, communicate with them. I don't know that a restriction is necessary at this time. I mean, there may be some unintended consequences, but I think it's something to keep our eye on, understand how it's affecting those folks and the parents' decisions to go back to work. Early learning, the structured environment of teaching these kids there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
And that's where they like to say it sets them on a trajectory that's much more positive than if they weren't in this program, these programs. So.
Chuck, just a clarification here. I did text one of my employees. They do an annual recertification, but if they change childcares or make any changes at all in their request for assistance or anything like that, they do reevaluate at that time also. They do not have like a 90-day reevaluation at this point. So that is what they're doing right now for that. But I also want to congratulate you and the staff for looking forward to trying to make a difference. Our staff met last Wednesday discussing brainstorming on breaking the cycles of poverty. And one of the barriers to breaking the cycle of poverty for a family is childcare. And there are one of the largest issues we have at working with families is that issue. And we don't have an expedited way to get them a voucher for childcare unless they're homeless. Doing this will free up and open opportunities for families in the city of Clearwater, and especially families that are trying to break that cycle. So our staff appreciates the efforts that you're doing too.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
No, I think definitely the positive outweighs what could be the negatives, because at the end of the day, the child is benefiting from that early learning, and I don't believe there's a program that will solve any problem by itself or be perfect. So I think this is like Kevin said, this I think it's a great program, and I support it. I mean, I think it's going to allow more families to be able to get the children in childcare and education at the same time they probably would be able to return to work. So I think the community will gain more than before. So
There's a lot of money been flowing, as you all know, from this pandemic. And one of the things that always comes with the programs you put together, it seems, is unintended consequences. And you try to learn from them, you try to defend against them with the next round of things. But yeah, if the good's outweighing the bad, these are decisions we have to make. So, I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Does anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? Okay, seeing no one come forward, may I have a motion to approve item 4.2?
I so move.
Make a second, do I have a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye, me, one.
Motion carries. Thank you, Pete. Item 5 is old business items. Do any board members have anything additional to report? Okay, we're going to move to item 6, Director's Report. Mr. Lane, do you have anything additional? Sorry, I made you sit and then come back up.
The only thing I want to talk about at this time is the upcoming Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. So I think we're probably going to, our next meeting is probably going to be convened as the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. So we'll have, I believe we'll have 3 meetings, very similar to what we did last year. If we have to convene a NAHAB meeting, we'll just do it at the same time. We'll convene the NAHAB meeting and conduct that business if it's needed, and then we'll adjourn and we'll transition right into the AHAC, and we'll have that meeting. But we'll try to have the meetings second Tuesday of the month, typically how we do it, so we're all on the same schedule. But, as we get closer to the holidays, that gets more and more difficult. People are on vacation and schedules get really tight, so we'll just play it by ear. There's going to be 11 folks on the committee, so it means 6 is a quorum. So we'll just stay really tight on it, and I'll communicate with you all as best I can to make sure we can all make the meetings, or at least more than half of us can make the meetings. So I'm thinking the next meeting will be that.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
okay.
Today's August 1, correct? 9th? That's the first time this year I've heard holidays.
I know, right? We're getting to that point, though. I'm surprised we didn't hear anything about Christmas in July.
Yikes, we're already at holidays.
It'll be here before you know it. Okay, item 7 is board members to be heard. I'll start to my right.
No comments.
No comment.
No comments. We can, Pete, I think this is a healthy
It
conversation.
is, it's a very healthy
I mean,
conversation.
I'm glad
No, that's why I brought it up. I'm not opposed to helping people. I spend my life helping people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going off on a rant here. I apologize. It won't take long. I guess after so many years, I'm getting to the point where it's frustrating the heck out of me that I see funding after funding after funding in program after program after program that's designed to do good stuff. And everybody involved wants to do good stuff. But the end result, what's coming out of the widget machine on the back end, I'm not seeing all those results. It's like a lot of it is just moving it along, but nothing's really getting done to solve the problem. It's like we're applying a bunch of little Band-Aids. Here's a program, we can do this program over here, and this will help. Here's a little bit here, here's a little bit there. But in the end result, we don't seem to be making the impact that I would like to see to really solve some of these problems. I'm talking about homeless. I don't want to warehouse people.
Yeah.
I want to try to reduce homelessness. To me, that should be the goal.
Yeah.
And if that's not the goal, and everybody's not focused on that goal, then everything that's being done, it's not really, and that's my frustrations right now. So I applaud everybody on this board, and Chuck, and Gabe, and everybody we're all working to try to get the same. I just am frustrated that we can't seem to get it to a point where we're really starting to see some progress. That's my frustration. And so I'm starting to take the position of saying, wait a second, what are we doing here?
Well, and two things to your point is one of them is we can work on the accountability side of these programs, right? And this is, I think, the role of this board is to say, if we're going to approve this program, we want to make sure that we also in a year, whenever this program is over,
Yes,
review everything and say, hey, this is not up to par with what we were expecting. I think we need to be a little bit more strict when it comes to, are we satisfied with the results? And that's one of the answers. The second answer is, to talk about homelessness in particular, if we want less people to be homeless, we have to work on prevention. We can't just wait until people are homeless to do anything about it.
I agree, Camille.
And
I agree.
so programs like the one we just talked about, you never know if there's a family the parent can barely go to work because they don't have childcare, because they don't technically fall under whatever eligibility is currently there. That may be the thing that saves them. That may be the thing that allows them to continue going to work. They don't get fired, they don't lose their house. So we have to work on these preventative measures more than we have to work on what happens once they are in these issues.
I disagree with you. I think they're equal. I think they're absolutely equal. I think you want to have preventative measures,
Yeah.
but you also want to have accountability.
Yeah, you have to
And
have
if you
both.
don't have the accountability, this doesn't mean anything.
Oh, absolutely. The
So
accountability
I
is
think
number
maybe
one.
it almost has to be a little bit higher.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
accountability has to be 60%.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I think it's becoming, it's becoming a point where it's time to really start having the accountability factored into this. When we meet, when we have a prevention program and it's going to cost this much money, okay, fine. How do we judge it? How do we
Right.
hold it? And what's the accountability in one time? In 12 months? Okay, fine. We
Yeah.
want to see the results in 12 months.
Right.
And if the results aren't there in 12 months, we want to eliminate the program.
Correct.
Or find different funding for that program that
Right.
will be more advantageous.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's not happening, and I think it needs to be put into not just what we do, but throughout the government. There has to be more accountability.
I agree with your point. There has to be more accountability. At the same time, Camille mentioned, you mentioned at the end of the year we'll, review the program. But what you're reviewing it's actually if the parents went back to work or not. But we don't have a measure for, is that kid now better prepared to go into kindergarten? And you will not be able to do that because a kid that maybe stayed home, and again, if it was my kid, that kid would be ready to, reading and writing already by the time it goes to kindergarten. But we're not talking about that situation, so. hold
But
on,
we
let me-
are, no, we are, because this is exactly right. Let's take for a minute, because what we're saying here is that we want the child to have that chance. So let's assume that out of the 42 families, 84 children were able to be taken care of, two children in each family. We can judge, I would think, at the end of 12 months, 42 families, the parents were able to work, the kids were able to go to school. This is a successful program. I think we can all say that was successful, because certainly the child is going to be better off
Yeah.
having gone to school. Who's going to disagree with that? But if we find out that out of the 42 families that we funded, 23 families took advantage of it, I would say that program wasn't too successful.
But Gabby's question is, what is our definition of took advantage of it? Because is taking advantage putting a child in a better childcare situation while the parent tries to look for a job and does not get a job at the end, or cannot keep a job? Like, how are we gonna define what success is? Is that what you're bringing up?
Yeah.
Is the child in daycare?
Yeah.
Okay, so then the child benefited,
Yeah.
right? All right, that's fine. But what if we find out that not all the children are in daycare?
They have, if the child is not reporting for daycare, they do not pay it.
Yeah, they don't pay it.
Yeah.
Because they're paying
Okay.
the facility, right? The
Yeah, they're
child-
not paying
they're
the
not paying the
family,
parents.
yeah.
The money's not going.
One
to
of
the
their
parents.
restrictions is, just so you're aware of this, and we see this like in summer camp, if you have a child accepting ELC vouchers and you take a week off to go to summer camp, you're at risk of losing that voucher from that point forward. So
Okay, so there are restrictions
yes,
in there.
they have that
That's
type
the
of
point.
restriction in
That's what
it, yes.
Okay.
I think that overall, the thing with working in these fields and solving, we all have passion for what we're doing, affordable housing, homelessness, all of these things. And the problem is, like the Band-Aid programs or things like that, it probably always is gonna be a Band-Aid. Unfortunately, us sitting here and us doing this and every program that we put forward is not going to solve homelessness. It's not going to solve affordable housing. I mean, even the person that came here, transportation, affordable housing, it sounds like an expert in that field. There's not a solution. So there is little solutions that we can do to help ease it. We're taking some of that pressure off. We're helping some. There's not a solution. There's not a magical Band-Aid that can
I agree.
make it better. Yeah.
I know there
And it's
isn't.
frustrating. It's definitely
I know there
frustrating.
isn't, but I also know that what we're doing
Yeah.
is not having the effects that we would like to have, or even I think should be having, after so much time and so much money has been spent on this program. I think it's time that we look at this. See, I agree with you that I don't think we'll ever get rid of the problem, but I think it's time we reevaluate how we're attacking the problem.
And you're talking about literally like all the funds that the city of Clearwater.
No. I'm talking specifically about homelessness and affordable housing specifically. I'm
Okay.
keeping it focused right there.
Okay.
I think it brings it back to, I would love for us to go see those success stories or drive by those projects. Maybe we need as a board, I've never done it with the city of Clearwater. When I worked for Largo, it was, you get the bad mixed in with the good, but when you see the good and you see the impact that good has done, it makes you reevaluate what you're doing, your time, your effort, the programs, everything. Because yes, you can have one situation that it really burns you and you feel like it makes you look at the whole program and go, it's not a success. But let's go out, I would love for the board to be able to go out and see those successes from the program dollars that we're proving that Clearwater has done. I think that would be a
The
great
success
thing.
stories are wonderful. When you see them, they're wonderful.
We're going to try to have that tour probably the January
Right,
meeting.
okay.
January's usually really light. Weather's a little bit better. But one thing I do want to say on this is a great discussion. This is dialogue that wouldn't have happened at this board when I first started working in this position. It's the board has become much more engaged, much more focused on really what you need to focus on. It's terrific. I really appreciate the dialogue. But with this one thing I just want to say, and Denise texted me, because she and I have learned a lot about the child care industry in these discussions we've had. And she makes a great point that early learning is the greatest predictor of long-term success of a child. So there's a benefit in here regardless of whether or not someone's, for lack of a better term, taking advantage. There's still a benefit to that child, and we will verify that it is a low-income family. But again, I really appreciate the discussion. I think it's terrific.
I feel like, almost every problem we have, right, homelessness, affordable housing, anything, it ties back to education.
Right.
So, and it's really hard for us to see, and put a number, this is a successful program or not. I mean, I have dedicated 17 years of my life working for affordable housing. And even that I see it every month, we serve 5-6 families per month. And we said, okay, that's a successful story, they move into affordable housing, but we don't really see the benefit right there. We see it 15 years later when we see that same family and we have those success stories that we see that mom and dad, or that mom was able to send the kids to college. She was able to obtain an education because now she has an affordable house to live. So the kids were able to create a sense of community. They stay in their own, their school. They made friends. So they progress in life because of that one opportunity, just having an affordable home. So it's really hard for us to say, I'm going to measure my success based on the amount of houses that we build this year. So it's 80 homes, right? So it's hard because we really impact so much more, We impact that neighborhood, Once we have a family, not only the community, it's impacted because that family is now paying taxes, But, they own that home, so you hope that they actually are taking care of that home. But, if they have 2-3 kids or none, I mean, that family is definitely benefiting and growing. So, yes, you will have those people that take advantage of it. We have a set of rules, and, we check, you can get into the program or not. You will have those people that abuse the program, like in any program. I mean, you're talking about a kitchen, right? I mean, free food, I can walk in. Nobody's probably going to ask me if I have an income to pay for my food or not.
Right.
But you would hope that, at least the majority of the people that are taking advantage of that program are really benefiting from, they're not going home, hungry that night. So it's really hard for us to determine, in a short period of time, that was that program successful. So we can put measures, like you said, to have certain accountability. But we cannot get to the point that it becomes impossible for that family to apply for that program because, again, do they have access to the internet and go and look for a job? They may have to go to the public library. So there's so many things that you say, well, we have so many programs, and you're right. And that's why this country is such a great country, because we have those programs that allow for the people to access maybe better their lives, we have many other countries that's not even possible. So if you're born, and your family has access to finances, then you can succeed in life. Otherwise, you're determined to be who you are and you don't have any opportunity. So that's what this country is different from many others. We have those opportunities, and and yes, we can create a little bit more of accountability, but we cannot make it impossible. So
I don't want to see it made impossible. I agree with everything you just said. But you know what? One of the reasons why the program works when people get a house through your program is that they have some skin in the game, don't they?
yeah, they do.
And that, I'm not going to go way off here, and that comes back to Scripture. The very first poverty program that was designed when Moses told the Jews, do not harvest all your field. Leave the corners of your field. This is what God said to him. Leave the corners of your field so that the poor can help themselves. The poor, the widows, the orphans, they could go into those fields and they can get grain. They could take that. That was theirs. That was left for them, which meant they had a little skin in the game. They had to go get it a little bit. I sometimes feel, and if I'm offending anybody, I apologize, but I sometimes feel like we want to make our programs to be so accessible to everyone, and I want the accessibility factor, please. Mm-hmm. I don't want to make it difficult to apply for these programs. But I want to be some accountability that while you're in this program, you are participating properly and doing the things that it was designed to do for you. That the advantages that it was meant to be, you're taking advantage of those, of those benefits, rather than using the system to just scam the system, for lack of a better term. And unfortunately, from what I see, we take care of many, many, many people, but there are a lot of scammers too. It's not the occasional scammer. Look at the programs and look at the dollars. There's more than an occasional scammer. That's why I'm saying, can't we start looking at this a little bit closer? Can't we start making this accountability be a little bit more? Don't make it difficult to get in the program. Make it easy to get in the program. I want to help as many people as we can. But once you're in the program, now you got a little skin in the game. Now you got to work a little bit. You got to contribute. And if you're contributing, God bless you, we want you to take the next level. We want to give you even more to help you out. Because you're right, these programs can't be measured in a day or a year. If you can get a child into daycare, and if he can get an education, and if he completes the education, because let's take this one more step. What's the dropout rate in public schools in Florida right now? Does anybody know? The high school dropout rate is something around 40%.
Wow, is that high?
Yeah. So if the very first thing you give somebody for free is a public education, and they don't take advantage of that, and we all agree from what Denise said, and we all know this because we see the people that are most require most need don't have that education that they should have gotten. But if you drop out of high school, boy, you're just on a downward trend then, aren't you? But that was the very first thing the government gave you for free. Maybe at that point we should say, wait a second, we just gave you something to help you, which everybody gets. Every taxpayer, everybody in America gets a free public education. If you can't take advantage of that, this is looking out 15 years. Maybe you can't be on other programs then. I don't know. I'm just saying that at some point we have to have this hard conversation that says, when does it end? It should never end, because there's always going to be people in need, and the people in need to be helped.
I think
But in helping people, are we creating an entire new group of people that have just learned how to scam the system too?
Well, at our level, with the NAHAB and even the AHAC, when that group meets, we're working mainly with other entities than the city, right? The city is the entity that receives the funds from the state and the federal government. And then we are, through this board, able to distribute these funds or help distribute these funds to organizations that have accountability. I mean, they are signing, I'm going to use the word signing, but they're signing those contracts and saying, this is how we're going to use these funds. We're using, I mean, there's an accountability system in place there. It's our decision if we wanted to change that. We could look at every time they come in front of us and they say, this is how much we're asking for, this is what we're going to use it for. We could look and introduce and say, what about this and this and that? Can we add this measurable? Can we add, this qualifiable, whatever it may be, that we think would be a better way to measure it. But I think the accountability is already there. I think the accountability, the problem is, like Lindsay said, one program, just because one program is needed doesn't mean that the next one isn't. And it's just like having this presentation for transportation and saying, yes, if we make transit better in Pinellas County, it's going to help people go to jobs and it's going to help people because they're going to be able to live wherever the affordable housing is. But buses aren't going to they're not going to solve the problem in themselves. It's little pieces of the puzzle that keep making it better. And I think as long as we decide at the board level to continue asking for all of our partners to be accountable to, the dollars that they're given and the promises that they make, if you will, we're doing that. We're doing that part. We're making that effort.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, Camille. I guess everything that I just said should be taken in the abstract. I'm not trying to speak specifically about the people that are on this committee and the people we see. I'm talking about in general. I'm saying I would like somewhere to see the conversation start to shift to start looking at you've got to think, the paradigm has to shift a little bit. You just can't, what's the definition of insanity? You just keep doing the same thing over to expect different results? That's what at some point in time, we need to have a shift in our thinking. Or just because it's this way doesn't necessarily mean that's the right way.
Correct, and I agree with that.
That's an abstract. That's all I'm talking about.
Yep.
So my staff typically watch these meetings. Told the graduation rate is 90.1%.
Oh.
I don't know what source.
Depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, depending on what schools that you're looking at in your inner city
What
schools
is the
versus-
graduation rate from
Yeah.
the time they start high school or the time they start middle school? It's different major, it's anywhere from 90 to 85 or 86% is what I've seen.
Running, it used to be on Chuck's side and running these programs and accountability and things like that. There is accountability for these programs, I want to say. The amount of paperwork, the overseeing, the things that we have to turn in, there's accountability, there's documentation and things like that. Yes, I feel a few can get through. I kind of feel in just hearing you, I think we're abstract or anything, but I think it's a little focused on the negative of some that have taken advantage. I don't think the majority has. Even, when you guys talk about they've gone through and they're starting to foreclose on these people that refuse to pay the loans or things like that. So there is accountability. Does sometimes it take time? Yes. The long-term successes, yes, are hard to predict, but even when you go down to the CDBG, SHIP, or any of the funding, if you look at the dollar spent on some of the programs, a down payment assistance program, it's not just touching that one person. It's not just touching the person that gets the loan for the down payment assistance. There are so many hands in that, and boosts to our economy, boosts to neighborhoods, boosts that one single case affects. So I think accountability and it's there. There's a lot of accountability. There's a lot of paperwork. I know your staff has to go through because I used to do it. A lot of monitoring. It's stressful. Every case file is ridiculous with the amount of paperwork. Maybe follow up and follow through has lacked in the past once we've gotten that case through. I think it's there. I'm not seeing it not be there. I'm not seeing the Pinellas County Early Coalition, Learning Coalition. I'm sure they have a lot of paperwork, and now that they're getting CDBG funds, there's going to be a lot more that they have to do in order to have these cases come through. So that's just where I stand with it. I think focusing a little bit back to we can't fix it all. It's frustrating. We want to see a huge impact. We want to sit here and see the impact. And I think maybe reminding ourselves of the cases that have been successes and the funds that have gone through and the programs that have been successful is just a different mindset to look at.
Chuck, just one thought here real quick as we're moving forward this is the time to think about it. Looking towards next year's funding opportunities for the agencies that we fund, maybe we ought to think about putting in the application process. What are your expected outcomes, not outputs, but what are your outcomes? And really look at that more in the grant evaluation process as we review the applications. I don't know, but I do know we do some of that, but we're not as intentional on that, at least in the review process, that maybe that would be a step forward.
So maybe, in those eligibility steps, so say, I'm going to apply for a Habitat home, do you all know what the families have to go through, So maybe that serves as an education, like for all the programs, like Kevin said, that we support in the city, maybe we learn a little bit more about that, and maybe we can always make a comment about it,
Right.
like what if, you add, this other step, or, I think that would be beneficial because we will be better, at least I will be better educated about what the other programs do and how they do it, like do they come and, I'm going to go and ask for childcare and I just have to sign my name and and I get the free voucher, or is it more, So I think that would be.
And it's a
ideal.
different mindset when you're looking at that as to what is the outcome of the program or what is the community impact of the program, which can be huge. It might be a small outcome, but could be a huge community impact.
Absolutely, yeah.
It seems every year our applications for funding, we're always tweaking them.
Yeah.
We're always trying to improve them from the year before. Maybe that's something I need to bring to the board and get your feedback on it. Just bring a sample application. We have several of them because there's several programs, but for you to see that and provide feedback on that, that'd probably be a good exercise for the beginning of the year. Those applications, of course, we start taking applications in February, early March. That's really when it all starts. So maybe at the beginning of next calendar year, we'll do that. That'd be a good exercise. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, anything else? All right,
I love this conversation.
I
thought
do
it was very
too.
healthy. I mean,
I think so too.
Well, I can only speak for myself, but you didn't offend me.
Oh, no.
I mean, I
that's not-
welcome the challenge and the conversations. I think
I
it's
just-
healthy.
And if I offend anybody, I'm sorry, but I just think sometimes you got to throw that grenade out there to get the conversation going.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The only thing I would say is let's be aware of the tone and the language we use, that this is a public meeting, saying people are scamming the system. We may say that privately, but that's not always the best term that we could use in a public meeting. That we can get the same mindset across to each other without making it sound to somebody who's watching the meeting, feel like we're downplaying them.
I'll take that admonishment.
All right, our next NAHAB meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 13th at 9 a.m. here in council chambers. We are adjourned.